Going live.
Okay. Hi, this is a public meeting of the Indiana Arts Commission Arts Recovery Program Advisory Review Panel. I'm Dusty Stemmer, Commissioner from Chesterton. Today is August 18th, and we are streaming live via webinar. We welcome applicants who may be listening in today. And as a reminder, there is to be no direct contact or conversation about the evaluation or the application with panelists before, during, or after the panel meeting. At this time, I would like the panelists and the staff to introduce themselves, stating their name, occupation, and where they are from in the state. Ernest, why don't you get us started?
I will. Thank you, Dusty. Ernest Disney Britton, Vice President of Community Impact and Investment at the Arts Council of Indianapolis. Thank you.
Lisa?
Good morning. I'm Lisa Abbott, and I am an Indiana Arts Commission Commissioner from Region 7 in Fishers. By profession, I am a corporate communications professional.
Great. Terry?
Good morning. I'm Terry Witt-Bailey. I'm from Muncie, but I serve as the Vice President and Chief Program Officer for the Center for Leadership Development, and I also serve as the co-chair for the Indiana Arts Advocacy Council.
Great, thank you. John?
My name is John Robeson. I'm the Executive Director of Arts Indiana. We are the Regional Arts Council based over in Terre Haute, and we're a regional arts partner of the Indiana Arts Commission.
Thank you. And now the Indiana Arts Commission staff, Paige.
Hi, everybody. I'm Paige Sharp, and I am the Deputy Director of Programs for the Arts Commission.
Chapin.
Hi there, Chapin Schneck. I am our Contracting Operations and IT Assistant.
Bridget.
She bailed, but you got Connie.
Okay, Connie, sorry.
No worries. Hi, Connie Brom, Communications and Community Engagement Manager with the Indiana Arts Commission.
Thank you, and thanks for being here this morning. The Indiana Arts Commission received 57 eligible applications to this program, which has been made available by the National Endowment for the Arts as part of the American Recovery Act. All applicants have been reviewed based upon the following criteria: artistic excellence, artistic merit, and organizational resiliency. Of the 57 reviewed, the following 43 have been determined to fully meet the program criteria and are recommended for funding. I'm going to read the list of the applicants that have been approved. Forgive any mispronunciation. Duo Sequenza, Brick Street Poetry Inc., Clyde Theater, Historic Hoosier Inc., Early Music Associates Inc., Indie Movement Arts Collective, Bloomingdale Chamber Opera, the Tipton Community Theater, Black Box Theater Company Inc., Artesian Alley Limited, Zionsville Cultural District, Forgotten Chefs Inc., Michigan City Messiah, Regional Performing Arts Company, Fisher Arts Council, North Manchester Civic Symphony Society Inc., Fusion Arts Alliance, Jackson County Community Theater, Top 20 Inc., excuse me, Shack, Makerspace, Northern Indiana Bluegrass Association Inc., Old Crown Brass Band, Creative Women of the World, Main Street Productions Inc., the District Theater, Writing for a Change Foundation, Bloomington, the Indie Conversion Inc., Goshen Arts and Events, Ripple Effect Vocal Visionary Project Inc., Brown County Art Gallery Foundation Inc., Southside Art League, Perceptions Yoga, Mindful and Art Inc., Hagerstown Nettle Creek Players Inc., Imagination Nation, Haney's Corner Art District Association, Believe in a Dream, Inc., International Talent Academy, Friends of the Ohio Theater, Inc., Indianapolis Film Project, Inc., Art Mexicano in Indiana, Inc., Ballet Theater of Carmel Academy, Pre-Professional Ballet and Dance Training, Fonseca Theater, River West Theater, Inc., Creative Grounds Fine Arts Academy, Center Grove Fine Arts Academy, Inc. The panel will discuss their reviews of the remaining 14 applicants today. Once each application is discussed, I will ask the panelists to update their funding recommendations in the online system. Yes, recommended for funding, or no, do not recommend for funding. I apologize for this noise. The list of applications are on your screen in the order they will be reviewed, and none of the panelists have a conflict of interest with an applicant. Let's get started with our first applicant, Actors Community Theater of Seymour. Who would like to get us started by sharing their thoughts?
I'd be happy to start. This is Terry, and I'll just read part of my comments. I did say that I appreciate that this organization is continuously exploring ways to serve their entire community. And so my question, and just to raise is, you mentioned a season selection committee, and I wonder if you are making sure that the diverse voices are heard around the table so that new programming can be intentionally implemented. I also am happy to see that you are starting to add children's productions and youth directors to your programming.
Are there any more comments?
This is Lisa Abbott, and yes, I saw so many positive things in this application. I love to see that the board is met regularly and that communication has been strong throughout the pandemic. The things I noticed were that I'd love to learn more about the organization's current impact on underserved populations and any metrics that it might have to demonstrate this. And then we had also asked about a strategic plan, and that might be something to think about in the future, particularly as the pandemic, is kind of still part of the conversation ongoing. And so formalizing a strategic plan in the event of any type of future disruption could really be helpful for this organization, I felt.
If there aren't, are there any more thoughts?
I have one. I have just a couple of final thoughts. They do good work. I like the 8-year longevity of the theater program. I have 2 suggestions for them that make sure that you do have a written safety plan. COVID-19 is not going away, or its sister, its cousin. We had a great learning opportunity over the last 18 months to sort of plan ahead. And so have a plan and you'll be in a much better place. And second is to spend some time within your organization figuring out who are the underserved populations that you're trying to target. The application was a little general, but IAC is really giving you some good opportunity to think in terms of, look at the list. They list isolated geographic location, low income age, race, ethnicity, cultural differences, disability, or other. And so just be more specific. Go to that list. It is there to help you to sort of think through how I'm talking about the underserved populations that our organization does serve. That's it. Good work.
Thank you. If there aren't any more comments, I'll ask the panelists to update their funding recommendations on the online system. If you could do that, we'll wait a few minutes. Yay, technology. Okay, our second organization is the Carmel Arts Council. Any comments on that? If there aren't any comments, I'd ask the panelists to update their funding recommendations.
Dusty, could you give us just a second? It's just we're toggling between screens, so I personally.
Oh,
am
I'm
needing a
sorry.
second.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
Okay.
perfectly fine. Just letting you know.
Okay. All right.
Yes, because I have like, I want to have a comment related to
Okay.
the,
Carmel Arts.
yes, for them
Okay,
to
sorry.
unpack their, I just found the screen, so I appreciate the suggestion to wait for the toggling.
Sorry.
I'd like to unpack their response a little bit and see what others understood. The response to access was all people are welcome to the gallery to view and present
Yes.
their art. But that's not the same thing as saying we intentionally go out and invite or bring people into our space, particularly underserved. And so I was wondering how other people read that, because it could, maybe you saw something that I didn't. Access, I want to give them kudos for access being the first step of free of charge being the first step in access, but it's not the first and last step. And I just like to know more about what they are doing actually to provide access. And
Yes, Ernest, I had the exact same comment. How is this organization specifically providing arts activities and access? An organization, Arts Council here, has received AOS funding before, and congratulations to them for that. But I would hope that they would go beyond just saying that all people are welcome and really be strategic about finding ways to be inclusive. So I agree with you.
I completely agree. Had the same thing. There's only a couple narrative questions here. So obviously there should be some emphasis put on that. And that was not answered.
I'm in agreement with that as well. This is Lisa, and a lot of good things in here. And my comment is not unique to this organization. It's been something that we've seen in others as well. But it sounds like there's sort of an informal plan for ongoing financial stability and communications in times of disruption. But I'd suggest that for this organization, having a formalized plan could really be beneficial, just so that everybody is on the same page and that risks and opportunities have been clearly identified, and that there's a clear proactive stance on the behalf of this organization.
I think you guys have said it all, I think. Would you update your recommendation funding on this application? Okay, I don't know how fast this is working, so I'm giving you a few minutes.
I'm done.
Okay. Our next application is the Center Stage Community Theater.
Go ahead and start again. This organization, I just started by saying congratulations on being an award-winning community theater. I think that's awesome. But you never said what the award is, and you mentioned it 3 times in your application. And I just wanted to know, what is the award? The other thing is that you share a lot about your audience, but you don't share a lot about who you are. And in an application, we need to know who you are, as well as who the audience is that you serve. So I'll just throw that out there.
This is Lisa. Sure. Thanks, Dusty. Yeah, I saw some really positive things in here from my point of view. It's particularly helpful in any application when statistics and data points are included. And I thought this applicant did a good job of that by including some numbers for us. And is particularly demonstrating the reach across numerous counties. And I just encourage this activity of gathering data to resume surveys that they've done to resume this post-pandemic. That could be a really best practice. And I appreciated the effort to keep the ticket prices low. A suggestion or an idea maybe for this organization would be including a question on future surveys, if you continue the surveys, to confirm that that price point is indeed affordable for the largest portion of your target audience.
Great idea.
So just, to not go on assumption. I love that you're thinking along those lines, but maybe just to affirm and confirm that. I really love the idea of a free dress rehearsal attendance for retirement communities and nursing homes. What a creative and thoughtful approach. Really applaud that. Also, it's great to see that the board met throughout the pandemic. They're engaged with their donors. And as a communications professional, I thought it was great to see that this organization is doing a good job of keeping the communication lines open during disruption and seeking input from stakeholders. So really good job.
I had a question about, they went out of their way to say that they're the only community theater in Boone County. They used all capitals in their application. Is there not one in Zionsville, or I was kind of curious about that, but.
Is Zionsville Boone County? Yeah.
I think Zionsville's in Boone County. But I thought it was, other than that, it's not a big deal. Other than that, I thought it was a pretty good application. Like to see a little more outreach to underserved, but looks like they're doing good work.
So are the panelists ready to update their funding recommendation? If so, you could do that now. Our next application is Discovering Broadway Inc.
I'll start again. I am a total Broadway junkie and so excited that Broadway is coming back, and always excited to see how we can take Broadway shows across the United States for those people that don't have the ability or the time or the funds to go to New York. My question is that this seems like an organization that is hosting these Broadway shows. And is there some financial support that the pre-Broadway shows provide to this organization? It seems like this is just a stop in Indiana. And the other part of this is that I almost felt like this was two separate proposals. It seemed like there's the week-long development of a pre-Broadway show where you're going to want to have people that are of a professional quality or masterful in their art form to do those shows by the end of the week. And then workshops for at-risk youth to learn about the Broadway experience. So it seemed like it was two different proposals. Both are great. I think both are necessary. I look forward to seeing what they'll end up doing.
Any other
Lisa.
comments?
Sure, I'll weigh in too. I too love this organization and its impact. This is the first I've heard of it, and it was really neat to learn about it. Incubating Indiana's creative talent and offering educational opportunities. This just seems like a wonderful thing for our state. The scholarships to at-risk youth is commendable and does demonstrate a level of commitment to reaching underserved populations. And my only question for this is a recurrent theme here in our conversation today already about how could this organization further its reach to rural communities, One question I had when I visited the website too was just the ticket prices. Understanding that a creative production, even if it's a pre-show, involves a lot and there are a lot of expenses, and that's completely understandable. But I wonder if there is some creative thinking that could be done about how do we make this even more accessible from a price point, to help better serve underserved communities, and just think about what that could look like.
I also like the idea of who they say they are, but I'm not exactly sure that they've done the things that they've described. The application doesn't really give me a clear sense of what I did and who exactly that is it that I did. And I'll point out, for instance, the 25 scholarships for at-risk youth artists from Indianapolis. I'd like to know what exactly that means. How are they defining what those are? Are those youth with disabilities in terms of at risk? Are those IPS high school students who are at risk? I'm just curious, who is it that this language seems pretty generic. And I don't know if that's 25 scholarships that has given 25. Does that just mean since inception? And I'm not sure exactly when inception is. But I would just like more specifics. If things were offered, did anyone accept? The being more intentional in their language would really help me to understand their real commitment to access.
And I agree with some of the things that Ernest said there. Well, all of them. This organization sounds really exciting. You know, what they're doing sounds really exciting. But there is, and I'm recommending it for funding, but there's some generalizations in here. And even, you know, a lot of times when we look at this, we go to the profit and loss, income and expense to help clear stuff out. And it's just a data dump. I mean, there's the balance sheets and all these details that don't help. And, you know, on the other side, we're seeing that in a lot of other places where it's just not enough information, you know, to help fill in the blanks. This is just a lot. So we couldn't see, yeah. Anyway, I concur.
If there aren't any more comments, I'd ask the panelists to update their funding recommendations. Our next application is Echo Effort, Thurman R. Adams.
If you all don't mind, I'll just go ahead and go first again.
You're our go-to girl.
I think I am. I have to start by saying that I really love your mission that says you exist to identify, equip, and empower artists. That says it all. So thank you to whomever worked to create that mission. I think it's inspiring. And now I want to know more. And this application didn't give that to me. I had lots and lots of questions. You know, how are your classes? You know, how do you do your classes? Do you pay your teachers? Are you a new organization on the scene? Who is the community when you talk about community that you speak about? Do you actually have a dedicated space for the classes that you talk about? And where do you give your performances? I believe that the organization has artistic merit, but I wasn't able to actually pull and prove that by reading this application.
I agree.
I completely agree.
Any other comments? Panelists, please update your funding application, recommendations for this application. Our next application is Fire Arts Inc. Like the name. Comments?
Well, this is going to be one that I think I certainly need to hear from the other panelists. What they do is really exciting and it's different and it's something needed. But I really have questions about the arts activities and access for underserved populations. I know Indiana is a certain demographic, but we're talking about a place where there could be more diversity or just an effort to it. I'd like to hear what the other panelists have to say.
Thank you, John. I actually agree with you. I'm looking through my notes quickly, and I say here that this organization identified some people whom they have labeled as underserved. They said one who is older, one with Down syndrome, and one with diabetes. And I said, well, I believe it's important and necessary to provide opportunity for folks who need special assistance. It's another thing to intentionally reach out to certain populations and intentionally provide an experience for them. It's also, in my opinion, uncommon and unusual to call people who are obese or have diabetes underserved populations, unless you're focusing on their disability as an important reason for categorizing them. So I had a concern about whom they identified as underserved.
Good comment.
Likewise, this is Lisa. In general, I think I would be looking for just a little bit more detail here. I'd love to learn more, and perhaps there are efforts to reach other underserved communities, but didn't see that reflected in the application. So that could strengthen it. The application also could be strengthened by having a solid written plan for financial stability and communications and promotions, especially since the amount being requested is earmarked for marketing and promotion. So I would have loved, since I'm a communications person, I would have loved to have seen some detail about how do you envision using those funds to reach your target audience, to expand your reach, and to ensure that those funds would be used strategically. And it also could be helpful to include any metrics, any numbers, any data points that could help an evaluator and to demonstrate the organization's current level of impact would be really helpful.
Great comments.
Agreed.
Can we update your funding recommendations? Thank you. Our next application is Indiana Fashion Foundation Corporation.
I can congratulate this organization for in the past receiving Arts Organization Support. That's a major feat, so congratulations on that. I think this is a good case where form meets function meets fashion. I'm not sure if I have enough information though in this application to know whether or not the project has artistic merit, or if it is preserving and or advancing the arts. So I'm a bit on the fence with this one.
Well, and I have to say that I did read into the application information about artistic merit that I know from a grant application here at the Arts Council of Indianapolis. So I was able to fill in blanks that you're exactly right weren't clear in the application. But I want you all to know that it's in that tradition that we see advanced by new fields of lifting up of art and design, the design, fashion and design, even though it is, and they happen at their events happen within our facilities on a regular basis for a number of years. And so they are a organization that is that does have artistic merit and have been credited for that by our separate grants panel this past April.
Ernest, that's fantastic to hear, because I can't see that in the application. There's just not enough information. So, I mean, that's really nice to hear that.
Yeah, thank you for that additional detail. This is so neat, and I loved the notion that this organization is cultivating the next generation of fashion talent. That's really a great vision. Another recurrent theme, again, that we've heard with other organizations: metrics, metrics, metrics. Anything that would help measure the current impact, and then those metrics also would identify future opportunities and help us to see that. Also, just more details about how the organization reaches rural and underserved population, because I think fashion can tend to feel a little bit esoteric, and so I'd love to understand the impact on those communities. The importance of fashion as an art form comes through really well in this application, but the case for funding, I think, could be strengthened by more detail and additional metrics.
Okay, thank you, panelists. If you could update your recommendation, Fundy. Our next application is the Kokomo Art Association, Inc. Comments?
So I like this application. I do have some suggestions for them. There is the application is so very artist centric that they miss the opportunity to really talk about being community and access centric. And so I just offer to them to look at that in terms of their language. And that's my only suggestion.
I agree with Ernest.
I agree.
Panelists,
This is
can we?
Lisa. Oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I'm not a very fast scroller, I'll admit it.
Sorry.
I really have to commend this and other organizations for just continuing to operate during the pandemic. That's not a small thing and shouldn't be overlooked here or anywhere else in our conversation this morning. So congratulations on that. I would like to learn more about how the organization reaches underserved populations. I think a written plan could be very helpful in anticipation of any future disruption. And I appreciated the transparency in this application on somewhat of a lack of engagement with financial supporters and target audience. And it's understandable during the pandemic because things were really, really challenging. So again, I'm a communications professional, so I'll always see an opportunity there for developing a strategic communication plan in the event of disruption, future disruption, and just how to stay in touch, because we know that communication plays a big role in engagement with key stakeholders. So I would be curious to just know what some of those obstacles were in communicating with key constituents during the pandemic, and then encourage the organization to think about, okay, if and when this kind of situation comes up again, how can we more effectively stay in communication with those key stakeholders?
Thank you. Panelists, can you update your recommendations? Okay, our next application, I'm going to apologize in advance for wrecking this pronunciation, Lark and Seal Theater Group. Any comments?
I would have said the same thing. So thank you. Thank you. I think that dinner theater is always fun. So I'm sure your community is really happy to have you. And I like the way that this organization incorporates children and youth in the programming. I don't think that typically happens in a dinner theater. Usually it's adult volunteers or semi-professional folks. And one thing that I don't see is how this organization intentionally wants to provide arts and arts opportunities for underserved populations. I did go to your website just to kind of take a look around, and I didn't see any ethnic or racial diversity, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I think this grant is designed to fund programs that operate and try to incorporate underserved populations. And I'm sure there's ways to connect in your community with other arts organizations or other folks where you can provide those intentional opportunities for people who don't typically look like the folks that might be in most of your productions. So I look forward to you making those efforts.
I'd like to add, I think this is a really cool project. You know, and they say they regularly use actors who may otherwise not fit in with friends or on the autism spectrum. I like to see that, just as exciting. I have to, the profit and loss, that it's completely unacceptable. You've got to, I mean, I would probably recommend this for funding if it wasn't for the income and expense statement. So it's one of those that I would ask Paige to say, I would personally probably recommend it for funding if they just it's just a handwritten ledger. I mean, so I would be more inclined to recommend it for funding if they just had an appropriate income and expense. I mean, these are federal dollars, these are public dollars.
So John, I did wrestle with that as well. But I also smiled as I looked at the hand. It definitely demonstrates a sort of a mom and pop kind of approach.
Right.
The numbers, but it is, as we can see, or we have to assume, it is accurate. And my suggestion to them is that they step into this century and move from mom and pop kitchen table accounting, which is an absolutely acceptable form of record keeping. But it's time to advance and go ahead and recruit maybe someone who is a local accountant or a CPA, or even somebody who just regularly does bookkeeping in the way that government agencies, et cetera, are used to receiving. And I think it would help them if they would do that. So John, I agree with your concern. And I just want to encourage them to take the next step.
Yeah.
Great dialogue there. And I also note, I mean, so many positive things here. 30 years of service, that's incredible, including the last year in the pandemic. Applause to this organization. I really honed in on the use of actors on the autism spectrum, and I really would like to learn more about that focus. Is this an intentional focus? What percentage of the actors, for instance, are represented by this population? And then I'd also learn to love more about impact on underserved populations and how this organization is intentionally seeking to reach them. I think it sort of fits well into Ernest's previous theme about just kind of taking it to the next level. And so having a strategic plan for how to do that and really articulating things, elevating the messaging for us on that, on any type of future applications that this organization might submit, could really be helpful in consideration of the application.
Okay, panelists, could you update your funding recommendation for this application? Okay, our next application is Merriman's Playhouse, Inc.
Thank you. Again, congratulations to this organization on preserving the jazz tradition. I noticed in their application that their operations were suspended and wondered why. Didn't know if it was COVID related and wondered what it would take to unsuspend the operations. Also, the application states that they propose to develop a student jazz open session for middle and high school students as something that might be unique. Maybe in this community it might be unique, and I'm not sure. Especially in high school, I think there are opportunities for that now. But the more relevant question that I think I would have is, what is the diversity of the students whom you are impacting? And there is a fee. I did notice that. And are these students receiving any free or reduced programming fees in order to get more diversity from the underrepresented populations?
I completely agree with all that input. And one of my questions was just, I'd love to know, there was some detail in the application about vacating the previous facility and renovating a new one. I'd love to know more about the rationale behind that and just some background on the relocation, particularly during such a disruptive time. And yeah, just more detail on serving other populations would be extremely helpful.
And then I agree with those comments. And I'd like to say it's nice to see the preservation of US's original art form. I thought that under artistic merit, that was something that I was glad to see in there.
If there's no other comments, can the panelists update their recommendation funding on this application? Our next application is the Miami County Artisan Gallery. Thoughts and comments?
I'd have to say that I'm interested and intrigued by this organization. I also really like the term, and I don't know that I can pronounce it, entrepreneur, as a term that connects the artists with the entrepreneurs. I just want to know more about the seminars, how they're streamed to the Miami County Correctional Facility. You know, how and why did that happen? Also, what is Lily's House? I don't know what that is, what type of organization, and why do they support disadvantaged Black women? What did this organization actually do for this Lily's House, and are they an arts organization? So I wasn't quite sure if we were dealing with businesses or art organizations. I was missing something, and I didn't get that from the application.
I felt that all of the responses, including the income and everything, was underdeveloped. It was hard to read what's going on. I mean, and what the money's going for. Is it teaching stipends? I just, unless somebody here knows something else. Although I saw that they received an APS grant, so I mean that's something. But I couldn't. Other than that, it was hard to read what's going on in the application.
I agree with what John and Dr. Bailey have said, but I also liked the case that they made for who they are as a small organization, and personally, I felt that I had evidence enough to support the application.
Yeah, I like this one too. And I particularly focused in on the videos. I thought that was just such a creative idea. And I did wonder about how the organization has built awareness about the videos. There's this great content. Sometimes the challenge is then how do we market this content to our target audience, particularly in underserved communities. So I just, I'd love to know more if you could provide more detail on that. And then on the P&L, I did notice that it indicates a contracted staff member, but I didn't see any compensation reflected for a contractor on the P&L, though the grant request is designated to cover salary. So if this could be clarified somehow, I think that would be really helpful. And I'm also just curious to know about why the board didn't meet virtually during the pandemic. Clearly, there were challenges around that, and the board has resumed meeting, which is awesome. But just sort of addressing that as an organization could be helpful, and understanding why that was such a challenge and how to overcome that perhaps in future situations could really be a good thing.
Thank you. Panelists, please update your recommendation. Our next application is the North Coast Cultural Association.
Thank you. I saw this as this was an interesting application. I wondered if they were a DBA because they called themselves North Coast Cultural Association and 4th Street Theater. And I'm not sure that mentioning that they were next to a railroad track meant that they were serving the underserved, or if they just wanted us to know that they were in a community. I believe that the Red Kite project mentioned in the application addresses the inclusivity of underserved population. I just want to know more about the program. It just seems kind of interesting to me, and the 10-minute play festival. So I actually liked this application.
Well, you all know, I agree. I'm going to visit. I'm going to find them by the railroad tracks. So, but I totally agree with what you said. There could and should be much more in the application to have a full understanding of it. And they left lots of space in the application to tell us more about the organization and more detail. So the suggestion is more detail in the future in all aspects of the application.
I agree. Sounds like this Red Kite and 10-minute play festival, it sounds exemplary. So it'd be exciting to know just a little bit more. I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been any connection with the Indiana Arts Commission previously.
I loved the outreach, intentional outreach to those on the autism spectrum. And I'd love to see any details about other communities that the organization touches, like rural communities or others. I was happy to see that the board met regularly throughout the pandemic and that it has plans for financial stability. I think the biggest area of opportunity to me for this organization is communications, especially with the community that it serves, and having a written communications plan in place could really be helpful. As far as the application goes, yeah, any kind of data points, metrics, more facts for us to go on would really assist us as evaluators to make a good recommendation, and just for future applications that this organization might make.
Thank you. Panelists, if you could update your funding recommendations. Our next applicant is the Northwest Indiana Excellence in Theater Foundation, Inc.
I'll go first again. I'm sure this was mentioned somewhere in this application, but I couldn't find out what NIETF stood for. So if someone else knew that, let me know.
NITS.
Yes.
Well, Northwest Indiana Excellence in Theater S. Service.
Yes. Well, the applicant, I don't know.
The
And I couldn't find it.
Foundation. Yeah, it's you guys can't see it in the online system because it's some privacy protocols. So, but it's foundation is
I had a hard time finding it as well. I had to Google it and really dig to just understand what the name was.
In Theater Foundation.
In general,
I'll be happy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ernest.
There was that pause and we both saw it. I just wanted to say I really like how they, I love their purpose statement. Also their board seems to be engaged in their finances as a whole. My concern is that their description of their sort of implementation of their purpose statement isn't fully fleshed out, and they just need to take more time to do that. Included in things like underserved, who is the underserved? Does your audience reflect the racial demographics of your community? Any of those things, just to give us a fuller sense of who it is that you're actually serving.
I agree. I really liked the emphasis on accessibility through public transportation, proximity, ASL translations, and storytelling and content that deals with racism and mental health awareness. Bravo. That's fantastic. I too would like to see the organization explore other ways to reach underserved communities. And for future applications, it could be helpful to give us some metrics on current impact. I wonder if the scholarship opportunity criteria, if there could be some ideation around becoming based on financial need as well as arts involvement. Just really articulating what that scholarship criteria is could be helpful. And let's see, in addition to its online presence, how does the organization promote theater and volunteer opportunities among rural and other populations? So I'd love to just know more about that. Is it through printed collateral? Is it through events on social media? Just some detail on that would really be helpful. I had trouble also locating on the website or elsewhere how long the organization has been in existence. So that could be just a little detail that could demonstrate longevity. And yeah, just a little bit more detail. It's been a current theme today, so this organization is not alone in that, but would encourage them to go that direction for any future applications.
Thank you. Panelists, could you update your recommendation funding? And this makes me sad already, but this is our last application to discuss. The Rivertown Storytellers at the Riverbend Inc. Okay, comments?
My comment, I guess, is to, this is a very small organization. It seems to meet all the criteria. I really like the responses. It was concise and tells what they were going to do, and they seem to have a good plan to implement it.
I personally love storytelling, and I think that it is important to have those types of gatherings in a town, however large or small it is. I wonder if this organization could possibly connect or collaborate with other arts-related organizations to really bring these stories to life in a way that might be more artistic and creative. I know that spoken voice and some sing-alongs are helpful to the artistic process, but I believe that there might be a way to add more creativity to an endeavor like this.
I too love the emphasis on storytelling as an art form. It's, largely could be a lost art form if we don't continue to perpetuate it. So really appreciate that. I like the multicultural emphasis. I would like to know more about what the presentations look like. For instance, I wonder if the audiences that the storytellers are reaching, if the children, for example, see puppets that look like them, that they really, truly, if the presenters reflect multiculturalism as well, and just something to think about. But it's such a visual as well as verbal art form that I'd love to see some detail and would love to know more about just things like that would demonstrate a multicultural emphasis.
I would just add that I agree with everything that's been said so far, and that I encourage them, since they identified that it's involved in increasing literacy skills, that they consider a partner from the literacy side, outside of the arts sector, to really reinforce that what they perceive as increasing literacy skills is actually working in the way that they intend.
Thank you. Could our panelists update the recommendation funding? First, I'd like to commend the panel on their thoroughness, their focus on important diversity questions. You guys were amazing, and thank you so much for reviewing these applications. This concludes the Arts Recovery Program Advisory Review Panel. If you have any questions, contact the program manager, Paige Sharp. So it was great to speak and listen to all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.